There comes a moment in every woman's life when silence feels heavier than rejection, when not reaching out feels unnatural, almost painful. Your hands itch to type the message, your heart whispers, just one call won't hurt. And yet, something deeper inside you knows that if you break the silence, you will betray yourself. This moment, this uncomfortable stillness, is not emptiness. It is power being born. Because what you are really fighting is not the urge to contact him. You are fighting the fear of being forgotten. And that fear has ruled too many lives for too long. Tonight, let's talk about why restraint is not weakness, why absence is not loss, and why, when you stop chasing, something profound begins to shift inside him. Absence is not an empty space. It only feels empty because you were taught to measure your worth by how often you are seen, heard, responded to. But absence is not disappearance. It is interruption. It is the sudden removal of certainty. And the human mind, especially the masculine psyche, is deeply unsettled by what it can no longer predict. When you are always available, always responding, always present, you become woven into the background of someone's life, not because you lack value, but because familiarity dulls perception. The mind stops noticing what it assumes will always be there. This is not cruelty, it is psychology. The brain conserves energy by ignoring what it believes is secure. Presence without the possibility of loss becomes invisible. Think of a clock ticking in a room. At first you hear it. After a while, you don't. Not because it stopped ticking, but because your mind stopped registering it. This is what constant availability does to connection. It turns something meaningful into something assumed. Absence breaks that spell. The moment you stop reaching out, something subtle but profound happens. At first, there is relief on his side. Relief because effort is no longer required. Relief because the pressure to respond, to show up emotionally, has been lifted. Many people mistake this phase as proof that silence doesn't matter. But this phase is only the surface reaction of the conscious mind. Beneath it, something else is already moving. After the relief comes quiet. And in quiet, the unconscious begins to speak. Suddenly, the rhythm of his life is disrupted. The message that usually appears doesn't. The notification that once confirmed your presence never arrives. The mind searches for patterns, and when a pattern breaks, awareness is forced into existence. He doesn't think, I miss her, right away. Instead, he thinks something is different, and difference demands attention. This is where awareness begins, not through longing, but through disruption. Absence introduces uncertainty, and uncertainty awakens the mind. What was once automatic becomes conscious. What was once ignored becomes noticeable. He begins to feel the gap, not emotionally at first, but existentially. Something that used to anchor a part of his identity is no longer there. And the mind does not like unfilled spaces. Psychological research consistently shows that the brain assigns greater importance to what is missing than to what is present. This is why unanswered questions linger longer than answered ones. This is why unresolved endings haunt people for years. The mind keeps returning to what it cannot complete. Your absence becomes an unanswered question, and the mind does not let unanswered questions rest. As days pass, memory begins to shift. Not the logical memory of facts, but emotional memory. The tone of your voice, the feeling of being understood, the emotional safety he didn't realize he had. These memories rise not because you triggered them, but because silence removed the noise that kept them buried. It is important to understand this. He is not missing you the way you miss him. You miss the connection. He misses the effect you had on his inner world. He misses how he felt when you were there, how grounded he felt, how seen, how regulated. Many men do not recognize emotional value while it is present. They recognize it when it is gone. Absence forces comparison. Life continues, but something is off. Conversations feel flatter. Interactions feel less alive. He may distract himself. Work harder, scroll longer, stay busier. But distraction only delays awareness. It does not eliminate it. Eventually, stillness arrives, and in stillness, the absence becomes undeniable. This is when awareness deepens. He begins to realize that you are not just another person in his routine. You were a mirror, a stabilizer, a presence that held parts of him together. And this realization does not come through words. It comes through loss of access. What makes absence so powerful is that it does not argue. It does not explain. It does not demand. It simply is. And the psyche responds more honestly to experience than to persuasion. You could explain your value 1,000 times, and it would not land the way silence does. Silence lets him arrive at the truth on his own, and self-discovered truths are always more convincing than borrowed ones. Meanwhile, something equally important is happening within you. When you choose absence, you interrupt your own pattern. You stop feeding anxiety. You stop reinforcing the belief that love requires pursuit. At first, the silence hurts. Your body is accustomed to reaching out for reassurance. But slowly, that energy turns inward. You begin to feel your own presence again. Your thoughts become clearer. Your emotions settle. You reclaim parts of yourself that were outsourced to waiting. This internal shift matters more than anything else. Because absence is not only about how he becomes aware of you, it is about how you become aware of yourself. You begin to see how much energy you were spending to maintain something that was not meeting you halfway. You begin to feel the strength of restraint, and restraint builds self-respect, and self-respect changes everything. Even if he never reaches out, the awareness still serves its purpose. Because absence reveals truth on both sides. It reveals whether the connection was mutual or sustained by effort alone. It reveals whether you were valued or simply convenient. But if he does return, he returns changed, not magically transformed, but aware. Aware that your presence is not guaranteed. Aware that connection requires intention. Aware that loss is possible. And that awareness is the soil where genuine choice grows. Absence is not a tactic. It is not a punishment. It is a psychological boundary that restores balance. It says, without words, I will not overextend myself to be remembered. It allows the other person to feel the weight of your absence without the distraction of your pursuit. You were never meant to convince someone of your value. Value is recognized when it is felt, and absence makes feeling unavoidable. When you stop being constantly present, you stop being invisible. When you allow space, awareness rushes in to fill it. And in that awareness, something real finally has the chance to emerge, whether that is his return or your release. Either way, absence does not take from you. It gives you back to yourself. Silence is not nothing. It only appears empty to a mind that has been conditioned to equate noise with connection. But silence is not passive. It is active, psychological, and deeply confrontational. When words stop, when messages no longer arrive, when the familiar sound of your presence disappears, something ancient inside the human psyche begins to stir. Silence removes distraction, and without distraction, the unconscious steps forward. Most people believe that men respond to what is said. In truth, they respond far more powerfully to what is felt. Words occupy the surface of the mind. Silence sinks below it. When you stop explaining, stop checking in, stop asking for reassurance, you remove the conscious structure that was keeping deeper emotions dormant. The psyche does not process loss immediately. First, it denies. Then it distracts. But silence does not argue with denial. It waits. And in waiting, it opens the door to what has been avoided. At first, silence feels harmless to him, even relieving. No expectations, no emotional labor, no pressure to show up. This phase can be misleading. It tempts you to believe that your absence has no impact. But what you are witnessing is only the ego responding. The ego always prefers freedom over responsibility. It tells itself that nothing has changed, that everything is fine. But beneath that confident surface, the unconscious has already noticed the shift. The unconscious mind does not speak in sentences. It speaks in sensations, images, moods, and memories. And silence is its preferred language. When the noise stops, unresolved experiences begin to surface. He might not think of you deliberately. You simply appear, in the middle of unrelated moments. A song, a familiar place, a passing thought. You emerge without invitation because the unconscious is trying to restore balance. This is not nostalgia. This is psychological gravity. The human mind is wired to seek completion. When something meaningful ends without closure, the unconscious keeps the file open. Silence creates that open loop. There is no argument to resist, no explanation to dismiss. Just absence. And absence is ambiguous. The unconscious does not tolerate ambiguity for long. It begins to search for meaning, and meaning leads back to you. What he begins to miss is not the conversations, not the texts, not even the relationship as he consciously understood it. What he misses is the emotional regulation you provided without him realizing it. The calm, the grounding, the sense of being understood without effort. Many men do not register emotional safety while it is present. They register it when it is removed. Silence reveals the function you served in his inner world. This is why he may feel unsettled without knowing why. irritable for no clear reason, restless at night, drawn to distractions that no longer satisfy. These are not signs of heartbreak, they are signs of unconscious disturbance. Something that once stabilized him is gone, and the psyche is struggling to compensate. Psychological studies on attachment show that emotional bonds are often recognized retroactively. The brain downplays attachment during connection to maintain autonomy. But when connection is removed, the suppressed attachment surfaces. Silence activates this delayed recognition. It bypasses pride, logic, and defense mechanisms. Words can be debated. Silence cannot. While he is navigating this internal unrest, something equally profound is happening within you. Silence forces you to confront your own unconscious patterns. The urge to reach out is not love. It is anxiety seeking relief. It is the part of you that learned to associate connection with reassurance. When you resist that urge, you begin to separate love from fear. At first, silence feels unbearable. Your mind fills the gap with imagined outcomes. But slowly, a shift occurs. You begin to feel your own emotional rhythm again. You stop reacting and start observing. This is where inner power is rebuilt. You are no longer managing his feelings. You are tending to your own. Silence reclaims psychic energy. And this is where the dynamic truly changes. Because when you stop feeding the unconscious bond through constant contact, the bond does not disappear. It descends. It moves from the conscious layer of habit into the deeper layer of meaning. And meaning has weight. This is why attempts to stay friends or to keep light contact often prevent return. They soothe the unconscious just enough to avoid confrontation. Silence does the opposite. It removes the emotional anesthetic. It forces the psyche to feel the loss fully. He may begin to dream about you. This is not coincidence. Dreams are the unconscious processing what the conscious mind avoids. You appear because you represent something unresolved, something unfinished, something that mattered more than he allowed himself to admit. And still, silence does not guarantee his return. That is not its purpose. Its purpose is truth. It reveals whether the bond was deep enough to survive the descent into the unconscious. If it was, awareness will rise. If it wasn't, the silence will still have done its work by freeing you from chasing something that could not meet you. If he reaches out, it will not be casual. It will be charged, not with words, but with emotional weight. Because silence compresses emotion, it concentrates it. And when it finally releases, it does so with force. But even if he never speaks again, silence has already given you something more valuable than closure. It has returned you to yourself. It has shown you that your presence carries psychological impact, even in absence. That you do not need to explain your worth for it to be felt. Silence is not withdrawal. It is alignment. It aligns you with self-respect, and it aligns the unconscious with truth. And the unconscious always tells the truth, eventually. What rises from silence is not desperation. It is awareness. When you stop reaching outward for validation, something subtle but profound begins to happen within you. At first, it feels like loss. Like standing in a room that suddenly went quiet, unsure of where to place your hands or your thoughts. Your body has been conditioned to move toward him, to check, to hope, to wait. And when you interrupt that motion, your nervous system protests. But this discomfort is not danger. It is withdrawal from a pattern that once felt like survival. Reclaiming your center does not happen all at once. It begins in the smallest moments, when you resist the impulse to open your phone, when you choose to sit with the H instead of numbing it with contact. These moments feel insignificant, but psychologically, they are seismic. Each time you do not reach out, you are telling your inner world, I am safe even without reassurance. That message rewires something deep. For a long time, your emotional gravity was oriented around him. His responses shaped your mood. His absence dictated your anxiety. Without realizing it, you placed your sense of stability outside yourself. This is not weakness. It is what happens when connection becomes tied to self-worth. But the psyche cannot remain balanced when its center is external. Eventually, something fractures. Silence pulls the center back. As you stop chasing, the emotional energy that once flowed outward begins to return. At first, it has nowhere to go. It circles as restlessness, sadness, irritation. But slowly, it settles. You begin to notice yourself again. Your thoughts are no longer interrupted by the need to check if he's there. Your emotions begin to rise and fall on their own rhythm, not in reaction to his. This is what it means to come home to yourself. There is a quiet dignity in this process that few people talk about. Because reclaiming your center is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It happens in solitude. In evenings where you choose yourself over obsession. In mornings where your first thought is not him. These are the moments where inner authority is rebuilt. Psychologically, this is the restoration of the self. When you stop orienting your identity around someone else's attention, your mind regains coherence. Anxiety decreases because your emotional safety is no longer dependent on another person's availability. You begin to feel grounded, not because everything is resolved, but because you are no longer fragmented. And this inner shift changes how you move through the world. Your posture changes. Your voice steadies. You listen more deeply to others and to yourself. People feel this shift even if they cannot name it. You are no longer reaching. You are standing, and standing is magnetic. This is why reclaiming your center often coincides with unexpected attention from him or from others. Not because you are trying harder, but because you are no longer trying at all. The psyche is drawn to wholeness. When you are centered, you radiate presence instead of need. There is also grief in this process. Grief for the version of yourself that overgave, that waited, that believed love required constant proof. Allow that grief. It is part of integration. You are not rejecting your past self. You are understanding her. And understanding brings compassion, not shame. As you reclaim your center, you begin to see the relationship more clearly. Without the fog of longing, patterns emerge. You notice where you minimized your needs, where you rationalized inconsistency, where you accepted breadcrumbs as nourishment. This clarity is not meant to punish you. It is meant to free you. Freedom begins with seeing. And here is the paradox that unsettles many. The more centered you become, the less attached you are to the outcome. You no longer need him to return to feel complete. You no longer imagine reunion as salvation. You begin to ask different questions, not, will he come back? But, does this align with who I am becoming? This shift is powerful because it removes desperation from the equation. And desperation, more than anything, distorts connection. When you are centered, you are not auditioning for love. You are evaluating it. This is often when he feels the shift most strongly. Not because you told him anything, but because the energetic dynamic has changed. You are no longer orbiting him. You are rooted. And when you stop moving around someone, they are forced to notice that the world does not revolve around them. If he reaches out, he does so to a different version of you. One who is not waiting. One who is not afraid of silence. One who has learned that her presence is valuable even when withheld. This changes the tone of every interaction. You are no longer asking to be chosen. You are allowing yourself to choose. And if he does not return, the center you reclaimed remains. It becomes the foundation for everything that follows. New relationships, new standards, new ways of being with yourself. You are no longer driven by the fear of abandonment because you have proven to yourself that you do not abandon yourself. This is the true transformation. Reclaiming your center is not about control. It is about alignment. It is the moment you stop scattering your energy and gather it back into your core. From that place, your decisions are clearer, your boundaries firmer, your heart steadier. You were never meant to lose yourself in pursuit of connection. Connection is meant to expand you, not displace you. When you reclaim your center, you remember this truth, not intellectually, but somatically, emotionally, fully. And from that grounded place, whatever comes next will meet you where you stand, not where you once chased. When you step back, when you stop reaching, when you allow silence to exist where your effort once lived, something unavoidable happens inside him. Without your presence to cushion the space, he is left alone with himself. And for many people, that is the most uncomfortable place to be. Not because they are bad or broken, but because self-confrontation has been postponed for too long. As long as you were available, his inner world remained undisturbed. Your consistency softened the edges of his uncertainty. Your attention reassured him without him having to earn it. This allowed him to avoid asking difficult questions about what he wanted, what he was offering, and what he was avoiding. Your presence became a kind of emotional buffer, absorbing the weight of his indecision. When that buffer is removed, there is no one left to carry what he refused to hold. At first, he may not recognize what he is feeling. It shows up as restlessness, irritability, or an urge to distract himself. He may tell himself he is fine. He may even feel a sense of relief, but relief is often the first response of a psyche that no longer has to perform. Beneath it, a quieter tension begins to build. Something unresolved is rising. Without you there to stabilize the emotional field, he has to face the imbalance within himself. The questions he avoided now echo louder. Why did her absence affect me this way? Why do I feel unsettled? Why does silence feel heavier than conversation ever did? These questions are not asked consciously at first. They surface as moods, dreams, sudden memories. The unconscious does not confront gently. It confronts honestly. He begins to see patterns he once ignored. How he withdrew instead of communicated. How he took presence for granted. How he delayed decisions while benefiting from connection. These realizations are not comfortable. They challenge the image he holds of himself as someone who is in control, detached, unaffected. But growth never comes from comfort. It comes from the collapse of illusions. This internal confrontation is where transformation either begins or is resisted. Some turn away, doubling down on distraction, convincing themselves that nothing mattered. Others cannot escape the pull inward. The silence creates a mirror, and in that mirror, he sees himself without the filter of your effort. What makes this process so powerful is that you are no longer involved in it. You are not explaining, pleading, or pointing out his behavior. You are not asking him to reflect. Life itself is doing the work. And self-realization that emerges without external pressure has far greater impact. It cannot be dismissed as criticism. It must be owned. He may realize that your absence is not just about missing you. It is about losing access to a version of himself that existed when you were there. A calmer version, a more grounded one, a version that felt seen without having to perform. This loss can feel disorienting, because now he must ask whether he is willing to show up differently to regain that connection, or whether he will continue to run from intimacy. This is the moment where many men finally feel the weight of their choices, not through punishment, but through consequence. Silence does not accuse. It reveals what was neglected, what was postponed, what was assumed to be endless. Meanwhile, something important is happening within you as well. By stepping back, you stop shielding him from the results of his own behavior. You are no longer managing his comfort at the expense of your own clarity. This is not abandonment. It is self-respect. And self-respect has a way of demanding accountability without ever speaking. If he reaches out from this place, it will not be casual. It will come with a different energy, less certainty, more humility, because he has looked inward and recognized the cost of his distance. He may not articulate it perfectly, but you will feel the difference. It will no longer be about convenience. It will be about reconnection. And if he does not reach out, the truth still stands. His inability to face himself fully would have eventually turned into your burden. By stepping away, you spared yourself from carrying what was never yours to hold. You chose clarity over confusion, integrity over attachment. Being forced to face oneself is not a punishment. It is an invitation to maturity. Some accept it, others resist it. But either way, silence ensures that the work is no longer outsourced to you. You were never meant to be the place where someone hides from their own growth. You were meant to meet someone who stands beside you, aware, present, and willing. When you step back, you allow that truth to surface without force, without words, and without sacrificing yourself in the process. When you stop reaching, something fundamental changes in the relationship. Not on the surface, but at its core. The dynamic that once relied on your effort, your availability, your willingness to bridge every emotional gap can no longer function the same way. Silence doesn't just create distance. It reorganizes power, and power, when redistributed, reveals truth. Before the connection moved in one direction, you leaned forward. You adjusted. You waited. Without realizing it, you taught the relationship how to treat you. Not through words, but through tolerance. Each time you stayed when clarity was missing, each time you filled silence with reassurance, you reinforced a structure where imbalance felt normal. This was not intentional. It was learned through hope. When you step back, that structure collapses. The absence of your effort exposes what was being held together by it. Conversations that once flowed only because you initiated them now fall quiet. Emotional closeness that depended on your presence begins to fade. This is not failure. This is revelation. You see clearly what was mutual and what was sustained by your energy alone. Redefining the dynamic begins with this moment of clarity. You are no longer reacting. You are choosing, and choice changes everything. When you stop chasing, you remove urgency. When urgency disappears, the other person must decide whether to step forward or let the connection dissolve. There is no longer a comfortable middle ground where he can remain uncertain while still receiving the benefits of your presence. This shift can feel frightening at first, because you are stepping out of a familiar role, the role of the one who tries, the one who holds space, the one who waits. Letting go of that identity can feel like losing part of yourself, but what you are really losing is the habit of self-abandonment. As the dynamic changes, so does your internal posture. You are no longer seeking signs. You are no longer interpreting silence as rejection. You begin to see it as information. Information about capacity, about readiness, about emotional availability. This perspective restores your dignity. You stop personalizing his uncertainty and start recognizing it as his work to do. From this place, your presence carries weight. If you speak, it matters. If you walk away, it matters. You are no longer one of many options. You are a choice that requires intention. And intention is what many people avoid until it is demanded by circumstance. If he returns, it is not to the same dynamic. He does not return to a version of you who overextends. He returns to someone who has learned to pause, observe, and respond rather than pursue. This alters the tone of everything. There is less performance, more honesty, less control, more accountability. You may notice that he asks different questions. He listens more closely. He is less certain of his position. This is not weakness. This is awareness. Awareness that connection is no longer guaranteed. That access to you must be earned through presence, not assumed through history. And if he does not return, the redefined dynamic still holds its power. Because the relationship no longer exists in a form that costs you your self-respect. You have removed yourself from a structure that required you to be smaller, quieter, more patient than you should have been. In doing so, you create space for something healthier to emerge. Redefining the dynamic also changes how you relate to yourself. You begin to trust your instincts again. You stop negotiating with your own boundaries. You recognize that love does not require persuasion. It requires reciprocity. This understanding becomes a filter through which all future connections pass. There is strength in this restraint. Not the loud kind, but the grounded kind. The kind that does not need to explain itself. You are no longer proving your worth. You are protecting it. And protection is a form of self-love that transforms how others engage with you. People respond differently to someone who knows when to step back, because stepping back signals self-awareness. It signals that you are not driven by fear of loss, but by alignment with your values. This changes the emotional currency of the relationship. You are no longer available at any cost. You are available at the right cost. Redefining the dynamic means the relationship must now meet you where you stand, not where you once chased. It means that connection, if it continues, does so with clarity instead of confusion, with intention instead of assumption. And in this new dynamic, you are no longer hoping to be chosen. You are choosing yourself first. From that place, anything that remains is real. When you stop chasing, when you stop texting, calling, or looking for someone who cannot meet you fully, you are not closing a door, you are opening yourself. You are reclaiming your power, your presence, and your peace. Silence, absence, and restraint are not emptiness. They are catalysts that awaken awareness, reveal truth, and force growth, both in him and within yourself. You learn that your worth does not depend on someone's attention, that your value is inherent, and that real connection can only exist when it honors who you are. Whether he returns or not, the transformation is already complete. You have stepped into your center, redefined the dynamic, and aligned with a life where respect, dignity, and authenticity guide every relationship. And from this place, you are no longer waiting for validation, you are living it.